Hey guys, welcome back to the Moscow Mules HQ. A lot to get through this week in review with me, Shay Bowes, and him, Uday Singh.
Guys, welcome to the show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We're going to be attaching all the links to our Twitter accounts, to our Rumble accounts, so don't forget to subscribe to them all. Shay, this has been an even better week than last time. Did you see the shit show that went down in the Canadian Parliament?
Man, it's been a bad couple of weeks for the Zelensky PR machine, and it really went down the shitter in Canada. Let's check it out. This is the speaker. This is probably the biggest PR disaster.
This is gold.
Yeah, that's happened to Zelensky, and the idea that they can peddle and rescue themselves. The wheels were coming off the week before with the UN. This really has just really put the thing in the ditch to a great extent for them. Let's have a watch.
So for our viewers, we're going to show you what actually went down in the Canadian Parliament.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought
war veteran.
the Ukrainian independence against the Russians.
Against the Russians
During the Second World War.
Yeah, and just who were allied with the Russians during the Second World War? The Canadians
themselves.
They were the Canadians' allies fighting the Nazis.
Just look at this.
Look, here we go. Up we go.
A standing
Everybody
ovation. A standing ovation.
jumping up onto their feet. Look, leaping up for the Nazi. Watch. This guy has waited for this moment. He's 98 years old, this dude. Look, in tears. Poor old Yaroslav. Look at him. Look.
Nazi.
He just had to restrain himself there from giving the old... did you see? He kind of goes like this. No, he kind of goes... Oh, he kind of pulls it back in. Oh, my God.
His name is Yaroslav Hunka. And I was going to say he's in the gallery, but I think you beat me to that.
You beat me to it.
I'm very proud to say that he is from North Bay and from my riding of Nipissing-Temiskaming.
Yeah, he's about to fucking end your career.
Just
Look at this grinning halfway. Look, he's about to end your career.
A Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service.
Oh, thank you for all your service.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so let's talk about his service. Will we talk about what this dude's service was, okay? So this dude, Yaroslav Hunka, right? This man is 98 years of age, okay? In 1943, he didn't get drafted or sucked in. He has no sort of, I'm sorry, they made me do it. I was just a Wehrmacht soldier. I was drafted. I was pulled in. This dude volunteered for the 14th Galician SS division. Okay. Now, who were the 14th Galician SS division? Well, they were an SS division, a volunteer division of the SS, the Schutzstaffel. Okay. So when it comes to Nazism and the fighting forces of Nazism, there was no one more tip of the spear than the SS, the Schutzstaffel. This was a private army created by Heinrich Himmler, okay, originally.
And they say that the volunteer battalions, they were even more brutal than the conscripted SS soldiers.
Well, there you go, volunteers. These guys signed up for this thing. Remember, this is 1943. So the war has been raging since 1939. These people would have known what was happening in places like Poland and Galicia. Now remember, where this guy was born was originally part of the Polo-Lithuanian Empire, I think. So he was a devout Ukrainian nationalist, and these were the most voracious consumers of this Nazi ideology. Okay, we're going to talk about that a bit later on when we meet Miss Cirillo again. But this guy Hunka, okay, reflects this very dark passage in Canadian history. Canada has been an enthusiastic adopter of Nazis. It's brought them in, over 1,000 people who served and killed Nazis with their own hands. I mean, this is part of people know about this. There was a thing called the Duchesne Report that looked at this. It was suppressed. Jewish groups have tried to get this stuff into the public view, and this has really exploded it back onto the agenda in Canada. The Ukrainian sort of diaspora, or the Ukrainian sort of population in Ukraine, is very powerful. It's very influential. I mean, a lot of Ukrainians live in Canada. They've got a significant influence in politics as well, Uday, which is really interesting when you think about how many Ukrainians are now in places like Ireland and in France and in Germany. There's a huge Ukrainian population, and they're quite far right, these guys. Guess who? Justin Trudeau, this ultra irritating pain in the ass doofus, this asshole. I don't like Trudeau, as you probably guessed, right? Not for any particular reason. other than he's a complete shitball, okay? Guess who his deputy prime minister is, Uday?
The Freeland woman.
The
Yes.
Freeland woman, correct?
exactly.
The Mundo. And guess who the Freeland woman, Christia Freeland, guess who her grandfather was?
A Ukrainian Nazi.
He was a Ukrainian. He wasn't just a Nazi. He was the editor of a newspaper in Krakow, in Poland, during the Nazi occupation. And guess what he decided to write about during the Nazi occupation? Not, fuck the Nazis, get these murderers out of here. No, quite the opposite.
How good
This
the
is
Nazis
great.
are.
Let's get rid of these Jews. This dude was a
my
total anti-Semite, a total propper-up of the Nazi regime. Christia Freeland, the deputy prime minister of
bizarre.
Canada. Right?
This is bizarre.
She's also been seen marching in various marches and celebrations of Ukrainian culture. That might include Stepan Bandera, Roman Shukevich, people who fought in the Nachtigal battalions, people who executed hundreds of thousands of people at Baba Yar, these vile massacres. These dudes are celebrated in Ukraine with statues, with parades. Back in 2019, there was a huge parade for the SS Galician Division in Kiev, okay? So here's what's interesting about this whole thing. There's meltdown in Canada now. The Liberals are giving out, the Socialists are giving out, everybody's giving out. We've disgraced the Canadian Parliament, we're so sorry. Of course, what does Trudeau try to do? He tries to blame this on Vladimir Putin. This is terrible what we've done. We've made a terrible mistake, but it's important not to let Russian propaganda...
Commemorating Yom Kippur today, I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine.
I mean, what the fuck?
It's as if Russian disinformation
So-
put the former Ukrainian SS guy into the parliament.
No, so this will be
What?
next. Yeah, so what happens is they made this dude join an SS division in 1943. This is how far back it goes.
Vladimir
the Russian
Putin did.
influence, yeah. So it was the KGB at the time told him join the SS Galician division.
Join the Axis.
Yeah. And then in 75 or 80 years time, we're going to use it to screw up Justin Trudeau. It's fucking insane. Anybody who's still asleep to this insanity needs to wake the fuck up. It's insane. Wake up, bitch! But here's what's really interesting about it, and I wrote about this, and I've said this. This happens in the Canadian Parliament, okay? And everyone has a meltdown. We're so sorry. We knew nothing about it. Bullshit. Trudeau met this guy, Hunka, prior to this engagement we've just seen. He met him in a private meeting. He met him in a private chamber with his granddaughter. He met him. He knew who this dude was. They blamed it on this guy, the speaker.
He took the fall. He took the fall.
He took the fall, of course. But here's the interesting thing, and I think everyone should think about this. When this happens in the Canadian Parliament, and it's inescapable, look, shit, we can't keep this in the box. Let's throw the speaker under the bus. Let's say we're really sorry. We hate Nazis. We don't love Nazis at all. In Ukraine, there are hundreds of statues to people like Bandera, Shukevich, this guy would have worshipped Hunka. These were the founding fathers of radical right-wing Ukrainian nationalism. They were Nazis. They fought with the Nazis. They joined the SS Galician Division. They joined the Nachtigal police battalions. These are the most vicious. They killed hundreds of thousands of people in places like Babi Yar, okay? In Voilian massacres. It took days to do the killing. Think about this. In Babi Yar, 37,000 Jewish people were killed. Men, women, babies, children. Women were killed while giving birth. Can you believe that? Some of the accounts of what these people did to the Polish, Jewish, and ethnic Russian populations is so fucking unbelievably repulsive. You couldn't even repeat it. So what happens? When it happens in the Canadian Parliament and it's a PR disaster, little Zelensky, look, he hasn't apologized about Mr. Hunka. It seems to me he doesn't seem to be too worried. Because you know why? Because in Ukraine, in 2019, and today, everywhere you go, you can see statues to these murderers. These guys are idolized. They don't put them in jail in Ukraine. They put them on stamps, Uday. Check this out. Check out this graphic now of a stamp issued to Stepan Bandera, the father of Ukrainian nationalism. These people advocated, worked with the Nazis. Heinrich Himmler's, the head of the SS, said to them, you know what? I love to watch you guys work. He made a statement. He said, I'm only giving you the tools to do what I know you want to do yourself. Get rid of the Jews. They love this shit. So when it happens in Canada, the point here is the absolute hypocrisy. People like me, and you, people who've advocated saying, look, this is a bad situation. Ukraine has a Nazi problem. No, it's bullshit. This is a Russian talking point, right? But when it happens in the Canadian Parliament and their political careers are under threat, it's the Speaker's fault. But they say nothing. It's happening in Ukraine. The guy who was there, the reason this shit show happened was for Zelensky. But there's no Nazis in Ukraine because Zelensky's a Jew. Oh, that means there's no racist in America because Obama was black.
How dare you?
What the fuck? Are you actually so detached from reality?
But how does it really work? I mean, Zelensky is of Jewish origin, and the the Galicia battalion of the SS, they were killing Jews. They were killing his ancestors. How does this guy applaud to an SS soldier being of Jewish origin? That's what really fucking puzzles
me. The thing about it is, Zelensky's Jewish origin is kind of a la carte, right? He didn't practice Judaism at all growing up, just like he didn't speak Ukrainian. He had to learn Ukrainian 3 years ago. Started to learn Ukrainian. This man who advocates this ultra right-wing, pure, mein Blut ist mein. It's this Nazi ideology. We're going to talk about that now in a minute with this other individual. But this is an adopted ideology, you see, by Zelensky. He can't speak. He couldn't speak Ukrainian. He grew up speaking Russian. His name was Vladimir.
Which he changed to Volodymyr. I mean, this event has actually really vindicated Russia. I mean, in February 24, 2022, when Putin entered Ukraine, he said, we're going to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine, save the people of Donbass. And everyone in the Western media, all the Western leaders said, there are no Nazis in Ukraine, despite the
Azov battalion. It's a Russian talking point.
Exactly. And then they do this shit. The Canadian government has lost all credibility.
People even laughed at the terminology. The Russians set out their stall very clearly, and people thought this is unusual. We're going to denazify Ukraine? What Nazi? What is this bullshit? People said about Russia. It's much more difficult for people to laugh now when they look back and say, shit, there are a shit ton of Nazis in Ukraine. And the key thing about it is the disproportionate influence these Nazis, these fanatical far-right people have on the political system in Ukraine. Just like when Zelensky, said he probably thought he was going to, but he got elected, 78% or 70% plus voted Zelensky into power on the basis, Uday, that he would end the war in the East, which was this simmering conflict, and he would tackle corruption. This was 2019. Roll the clock forward, bro. It's 4 years. He's going to tackle corruption. It's the most corrupt country on earth. There's 1 million plus people injured. There's 350,000 people dead. The country is destroyed, okay? It's riven with corruption. This is a guy who has more than, even Forbes says that Zelensky has over $20 million in personal wealth. He probably has a lot more, okay? Reznikov, the Minister of Defense, swamped, snowed in with money, okay? Suddenly his daughter's buying a €7 million villa in France. Where'd you get the money for that from?
The American taxpayers, ladies and gentlemen. That's where she actually got the money from.
I mean,
hold on. You can't make this up, guys.
Yeah. Stop the printing presses. Where do you get the money from, bro?
The Canadian government, after this debacle, Shay, I think has lost all credibility, just like the Roman Catholic Church did after it was harboring and letting Nazis escape justice after the Second World War. This is the same moment. I mean, history is repeating itself. And just look at this former representative of the Ukrainian military, Cyrillo. I mean, after the fact that she was fired after making so many Nazi statements against journalists, against everyone, look what she says now.
Yeah, well, this is really fascinating. Okay, now just to give the context, this was a recording of Sarah Ashton Cirillo, formerly Jim Cirillo or whatever. I don't know. Whoever this dude was. Uday, this is actually fascinating. This is Cirillo, okay, being pranked by the very famous Russian dudes, Boban and Alexis, okay? This person thinks they're now talking to Petro Poroshenko, the ex-president of Ukraine, okay? The chocolate king, one of the most corrupt men in Ukraine, okay? This Petro Poroshenko. Now, so it's a unique look in the background of this person's brain where she reveals some very, very messy stuff about what's really going on. And some very dark shit. So let's have a listen. Now remember, when you're looking at this person, remember, they think they're talking to an ex-Ukrainian president, so it's all, yes, mein Führer, we will all right leaving.
And she's touching her hair all the time, like,
oh, mein Führer, I am so happy to talk to you.
and this guy goes,
check it out, watch, here we go. Oh, this is just incredible work.
Hi,
Watch.
Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Do you hear me?
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir.
To you, Mr. Deputy.
Mr. Deputy, the smile. Look, she can barely conceal it. Look.
I think they would like to be referred to as they. That's the new gender rules, Shay. We have to get in with the time.
Russians have a different culture. Russians are Asian. And ultimately, they do come from the Mongols. They do come from a grouping, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy, of people who are wanting to be slaves and want to be led just as it was from the days of Genghis Khan.
I think we have a terrible problem with most foreign fighters here because they are just a step above mercenaries. And they come here because all they know is warfare. And while I defend them in public, in private, I know many of them have very far right leanings. So there's some Nazi groups, and I've reported this. I also know that many of them are doing this because they have no lives outside of in their own countries.
So, Uday, what's fascinating here is, you've got Cirillo complaining about these foreign mercenaries, saying that they're far right, they're very dangerous, it looks bad for us, it looks bad in the press. Zelensky isn't doing a very good job, because she's trying to cozy up now to Poroshenko, thinking maybe he's going to get a second crack at the whip. So she's trying to say, he's saying, the dudes pretending to be Poroshenko are saying, I'm worried about our president, he's not doing a good job, he's making us look like assholes. She's going, I agree, mein Führer.
Mein future Führer.
Yeah, mein future Führer. It's so fucking, it's just devastating for the plausibility of this person, okay?
And this person in the end, the Poroshenko offers her a seat in the Verkhovna Rada, the Parliament of Ukraine, and just see how she fucking jerks, and that she actually thinks.
She jerks.
Actually thinks.
Well, she jerks. Probably does jerk.
She has a jerk.
Because she still has the equipment to jerk.
I can also propose you something. As you know, if it will be elections soon, I can propose you to take a part as a deputy on the next level, but it is like a conversations now. Of course, we need to.
Sir.
And
I would be honored, sir. I can say with no question, sir.
She was a terrible spy. This is Maria Butina, this Russian lady, who Cirillo fucking hates. Probably because Butina is a woman.
Yeah.
Whereas, you're a dude with a wig
we're
on.
We're going to get demonetized very soon, guys. So, of course,
we don't have any money anyway. So
check out our link on Rumble. YouTube is going to fuck us.
So this is a very sick person, I think. Very ill, mentally ill person. You've got to be that way. Because how do you I suppose it fits in with this narrative. I'm going to stop being, I think it's Michael Cirillo, okay? And I'm going to be Sarah Cirillo. And I'm also going to become Ukrainian. I don't speak Ukrainian. I have no language. I have no education. I know nothing about Ukraine, really. But I'm going to change everything in my life. I'm going to become this other person. And I'm also become fanatically devoted to this right-wing, hate-filled ideology. I'm going to call for the murder and killing of people. And also what I'm going to refuse to apologize for that. And then in amongst the madness are flashes of normality, where this person says, these people are dangerous. A lot of far right, a lot of Nazis, okay? Says this, okay? Admits this. But what is she talking? If she's complaining about Nazis, she's talking about the extermination of a whole race, basically, and saying Russians are non-human. They're Mongols.
They're Mongols. So she's not just racist against Russians. She's also racist against Mongols, Asian people, everyone. This is pure racism.
It's as if you're not Russians are not Europeans, and that's not the case. I think it's actually a very sad manipulation. I think the Ukrainians are quite smart. They see this very sad, dangerous person as a useful fool.
How did they get into this?
This person's being used by Ukraine to pretend that they have a very pluralistic society when it comes to LGBT people. But believe me, bro, the Ukrainians, they do not buy into this shit, okay? They don't. Okay, Ukraine is well known as a very dangerous place to be gay, a very dangerous place to be LGBTQ as well. So I think it's a very sad affair. I actually feel sorry for this person, that they're being manipulated and used. It's going to end badly for this guy, okay?
Yeah.
It's not going to end well. And it's very cynical how the Ukrainians are
sad,
using this person.
This is a very weak person, weak mentally. I don't know how this person actually managed to get themselves into this position in the first place.
But I do want the number of her hairdresser, because that hair is great. I need.
Do you want the number of her doctor in Kiev as well that helps her fucking transition?
There is a really wonderful general practitioner doctor in Kiev who works with myself.
Did you hear that? Yeah, so she also mentions that there's a great doctor.
For Mykola,
Yeah,
for the son of Petro Poroshenko. This is, you can't make this up. And
You can't make this up.
Yeah.
You just couldn't make it up, because people would say, this is like insane. This is just, it's been a bad week for the Ukrainian project.
Oh, yeah.
It's been bad.
This is
how
such a
badder
shit
could
show.
it get? So what about this, the Black Sea Fleet? We talked about it last week. Tell us a bit about that.
So about the Black Sea Fleet, I mean, Budana went on air and said that they have probably eliminated the commander of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. And
Did he say probably, or he said they had?
I think he did not admit it. 100%.
But Ukrainian media did say that.
Ukrainian media did say it. I mean, everyone was screaming, "Oh, the head of the Black Sea Fleet is dead," and then he just suddenly magically reappears 2 days later. Just check it out.
Черноморский флот выполняет задачи, которые поставлено командованием перед ним.
So when you look at this, they said that they've killed the top guy in the Black Sea Fleet, okay? They also said that Russia had attacked Konstantinovka, killing 16 people.
And they also said that Russia destroyed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. I mean, can you imagine this? Biden went on air and said, we are going to end the Nord Stream 2 pipeline before they actually ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
It's a year since the Nord Stream was attacked. And this is a very strange crime, Uday, right? Where neither the victim or the perpetrator seem to care about it. They want to just forget about it, right? The biggest single piece of energy infrastructure on the European continent is blown to fucking bits, okay? Only a superpower could do this shit, okay? Yeah, but it was a couple of dudes with flippers they bought in a shop and snorkels and a couple of potato bags full of, it was Ukrainians on a yacht, went fucking hundreds of meters down to the bottom of the Baltic Sea.
I mean, who said that?
I mean, come on. I mean, this is what the Western media say. It's fucking...
But I mean, if you think that really is the case, how do you explain this? Biden going on air and saying that they will destroy the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Just check this out.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring it in.
No longer be.
But how will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it. It was a deliberate act of sabotage,
what he says after
and now the Russians are pumping out disinformation and lies. We're going to work with our allies to get to the bottom exactly precisely what happened.
You've already got to the bottom. No, wait, you're already at the bottom. You're at the bottom exactly a year ago, blowing that shit up. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So why would the Americans, let's just flesh it out a little bit for the people watching. Why would America want to blow up the Nord Stream? Well, let's have a look at now, a year on. It's very interesting that we can model out a few of the realities of this. Russia, through Nord Stream, was supplying very cheap, very consistent, very high quality energy to the EU, okay? So you got German manufacturing, Germany being the beating heart of Europe's heavy industry, automobiles, technology, Siemens, these huge auto manufacturers, Daimler Benz. All of this stuff thrived, heavy industry in Germany, which was the heartland of European growth and industry, on cheap Russian energy. The Americans didn't like the idea of them having cheap Russian energy, because the idea for the Americans post-war was to keep the Germans down, keep the Russians out, and keep the Americans in. This was the ideology of the Marshall Plan. They didn't want to rebuild Europe because they felt like it. They wanted to rebuild Europe to control Europe economically and politically. That's why NATO isn't really a defensive or military alliance. NATO is a culture building project. Now, so what happens? This shit show begins in Ukraine, which they started in Maidan, which got out of hand. The Russians say, fuck you. They walk into Crimea and say, no, not happening here. And the shit kicks off in Donbass, okay? America lost control of it, okay? It spiraled out of control for them. But the one advantage they couldn't get when Russia was, in my view, walked up to the border by the Americans, and this inevitable military intervention happened by Russia, the Americans immediately saw an opportunity, in my view, to do something that they would have loved to do. They never wanted Nord Stream to exist, as you've just shown us, Uday.
Yeah.
So what do? You can now blow those pipelines up, blame it on the Russians, insanely. Like here's the tap, look, Uday, we're in Moscow, let's close down Nord Stream. No worries.
Why destroy?
No, that's Nord Stream shut down. Look, that's as simple as that. Look.
There is
no let's
sense.
not do that. Let's blow the motherfucking thing up. Let's reverse ourselves into give me a break.
Into the fucking...
But who would benefit from it? Before Nord Stream was blown up, the biggest provider of liquid gas or energy into the EU was
LPG.
Was who?
The US?
No, it was the Russians, bro. Before Nord Stream.
Liquid.
Before, no. Before.
Are you talking about natural gas, or are you talking about liquefied petroleum gas?
No. Now, after the Nord Stream is destroyed, guess who the biggest provider of LNG is, liquefied natural gas? It's now America. Before that, it was Russia. It was Russian energy, Russian gas. There's a single beneficiary to the destruction of Nord Stream. One, and it's the United States of America, geopolitically, geostrategically, and economically. And why? Because now the only people that can supply the volumes of LNG into Europe is who?
The United States. So this is how you actually investigate a crime. Who stands to benefit the most upon the crime being committed? It is the United States. Now they have almost complete control of the European gas markets. They're providing their super expensive American energy to Europe, and this is literally bankrupting.
And what are you
Europe.
doing? You're also deindustrializing Europe because German factories are shutting down. So a major competitor in the automotive industry, in technology, is now also on the floor. Plus, America now gets to politically manipulate Europe as well, because America's not going to end the conflict in Ukraine without the buy-in of the EU. But as Victoria Nuland very famously said when she was selecting the new government after the coup they started, fuck the EU, bro. And she said that. And
Check that out. How
Here
she
is.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it, and the EU.
Now remember, they did fuck the EU in the end. They blew up the pipeline which Germany and Russia had built to make themselves independent from America economically. And she said they were going to fuck the EU back in 2014. And when they blew up Nord Stream, they fucked the EU.
So Chay, the front lines. What's the situation like? Tell us more about what's happening, where the Russians are standing, where the Ukrainians are standing at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, I mean, remember, the thing to remember for people at home is people in the media are talking about this front line, they're talking about this conflict. This is a huge front line. This type of in-depth conflict, this combined arms conflict, hasn't been seen at all in Europe. Strangely, Sarah Aston Schuller says this isn't Europe, by the way, but on this side of the on one side of the Ukrainian 1991 border is Europe, on the other side is Mongolia, according to Cyril. Anyway, but along this 1,000-kilometer long front line, okay, where you've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of men engaged in combat, thousands and thousands of tanks, huge air force of the Russian Federation, okay. These front lines tend to be tidal slightly, but there's a general movement. So it could be tidal, but it's moving one way or the other. That's the general movement of war.
But ever so slight.
Because
the front lines have actually frozen a bit. I mean, the Ukrainians move in maybe 100 meters, they move back 200 meters.
Yeah.
So it's
one very interesting thing was released this week. So along this huge front line, what's happening now is we're starting to see gaps open up in the Ukrainian air defenses. There was an incident in the last 2 days where a Russian fighter jet fired a missile at a bridge, destroyed a bridge over the Oskol River. So you can see this fighter jet fired this missile, and the Ukrainian sources geolocated the place this missile was fired from. And it was fired 500 kilometers away from its target. Now that missile crossed 500 kilometers of Ukrainian-controlled territory, and it wasn't shot down or intercepted, which is fascinating. That tells you something, that Ukrainian air defenses is being systemically decapitated in these regions. Okay, this is very important. On top of that, the Russians are actually building and extending rail lines up to their static defenses. Okay, the natural advantage always lies with the defender in any military doctrine. Go back, to Sun Tzu. Go back to the Greeks. Go back to the Romans. You go to any military college and you'll be taught the defender's advantage is very important. You probably need 3 times as many men to attack a fixed structure as you do to defend it. Okay. The Ukrainians are 1,000 kilometers from their logistics hubs. Okay, they have no air superiority, Uday. Okay, they have a mishmash of different types of equipment. Okay, maybe 7 or 8 different types of heavy armor. They have no air superiority. So they, on the other side of the line, you've got 30-kilometer deep Russian entrenched fortifications, vast logistical and network of supplies to railroads and roads. You've got a huge military industrial complex where over 2 million people are working in this, and you've seen this firsthand, and we can have a look at some of that.
Yeah.
And they are, yesterday they pumped out another load of BMP-3s. They launched 2 new warships in the last 2 days, the Russians. And all of this is done within the context of the Russian border, with Russian steel, Russian technology. This fantasy that Russia is crippled, that we're going to destroy the Russian economy, that, this is von der Leyen and her washing machine.
Von der Leyen.
Von der Leyen, yeah, and her washing machine fantasy, okay? It's just gone to shit for them, okay? Russia, and this is really fascinating, I think it was the New York Times published an incredible article where they analysed the actual gains and losses in territory, and we can put up the graphic here. I tweeted about this. Since the 1st of January 2023, the Russians have actually gained territory and the Ukrainians have lost it. They analysed this, and it's an incredible graphic. Since the 1st of January 2023, despite this insane, suicidal World War I style assault that the Ukrainians decided to embark on against fixed Russian positions, losing, we now think about 80,000, terribly brutal combat.
Unsustainable losses.
It's terrible. These are human beings. Remember, so important to remember, all of these people, every one of these numbers, I think, you got to remember, beyond these statistics are human beings. There's lives, there's families, there's brothers, fathers, uncles, dads, sons. The West is so detached from the reality, the brutality of this war.
They don't care. They said there are no American soldiers dying. The Russians are dying. You remember what Lindsey Graham says.
And the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent.
It's the best money we have ever spent.
And you've got Republicans for Ukraine and stuff saying, we're only spending 5% of our defense budget to cripple the Russian army. The Russian army isn't crippled.
They're stronger than ever.
The Russian army will be left after this conflict with the most combat veteran-rich air force,
full of experience,
massive. The Russian army will be exceptionally well honed and flushed with absolute veterans. The Ukrainian army has been destroyed probably twice. I would suggest heading for 3 times. The army of 2014, that was built from 2014 up until the last Russian intervention, was completely destroyed. It was 250,000 men. They were training 10,000 men to NATO standard. But we've seen how men trained to NATO standard now fare when they're crossing minefields. It's just brutal. So in conjunction with what's actually happening on the front lines, you see the fact of defense. The defense is so important in that the defensive advantage. And Napoleon very famously said, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. And so this is the Russian attitude. And even the New York Times says this, and you can see this in the graphic. The New York Times says the Russians are happy to sit back and let them come. And it's a brutal war of attrition. And you can also see in the casualty figures from Western sources that Russian casualties have completely dropped off a cliff and the Ukrainian ones have gone through the roof. This is an unsustainable, horrendous war of inhumanity. And the engine of this war of inhumanity is NATO and the West. Without the money, without the cash, without the meager weapons that they're drip feeding into Ukraine, this war has only been kept on life support long enough for the electoral cycle, Uday. And
so which piece of NATO equipment is the latest victim to the entire Ukrainian minefield?
Well, here, look, I also tweeted about this during the week. There was, every time NATO decides to give an old piece of equipment into Ukraine, is the game changer. The game changer thing is becoming a laugh, a joke, a running joke. I think we're on game changer number 7. I think ATACMS is going to be the next one. But this one was the Swedish Stridsvagn 122, which is an up-armoured Leopard tank. To great fanfare, they were sent Guess how many? This huge amount. Guess how many? 10.
So
They sent 10 tanks to Ukraine, right? Which is just fucking insane, right? You know, and in the last couple of days, the Russians have destroyed 2 of them. So they've destroyed 20% of Ukraine's heaviest armored tank. And you know what they did it with? A couple of $100 drones with RPG-7s on it, probably manufactured in the 1970s, of which Russia has millions.
A shit ton of. But I mean, actually, the Stridsvan 122 is actually a very souped-up Leopard 2A5. This is one of the most armored tanks in the world, and the fact that it is just getting destroyed in the Ukrainian minefield just goes to show that all this equipment, all this NATO equipment, is not meant for long war. These are meant for low to medium-sized conflicts. This is not meant for such heavy warfare. The T9TM, which I tested out not too long ago, actually, we can have a look at that.
I'm gonna get into the commander's seat and command this beautiful tank and fire at that target. Whoa. So I'm right now in the commander's seat, and I've got the thermal vision screen in front of me. This is the display. This is a touchscreen display where is the satellite navigation. This is a very, very dynamic satellite navigation system. It shows everything: the terrain, where you are located, the enemy, and your friendlies. Заряжаем! Now it's loaded, and now we're ready to fire. Огонь!
It is actually a very, very beautiful piece of equipment, very advanced, and it is more suited to this type of warfare.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's built for war in the context of defending Russia. Russia didn't build its tanks or its armor to go abroad or to be sold on open markets. They built it primarily in Soviet times for a conflict with NATO, probably. So the reality here is you've got Russia building probably hundreds of tanks a year now. They've upskilled and upgunned and ramped up their war production hugely, and that's benefiting the Russian economy here. You got almost full employment in Russia. So all of these elements of the econo-cultural and military war against Russia are failing. I mean, any objective observer, put the numbers up there, it's failing. So what do you do when it's failing in the West? You keep failing. You fail harder and harder until you hope something else happens. You hope China tries to invade Taiwan, so you go, look over there. You hope that Russia responds to the attack on the Black Sea Fleet by using a tactical nuke somewhere. You hope somebody saves you by fucking up worse than you've been fucking up. That's the only plan the West has. And this is something the people in the West think there's a plan, think there's an actual plan. There is no plan. This is the terrifying thing about this calamitous conflict that the West created through the illegal coup, funded, and now are squirting a bit of petrol on every now and then. As soon as the flames die down, they squirt a bit more on, not enough to burn the Russians, but enough to keep the Ukrainians hopping, enough to keep this going as long as they now the desperate reality is that NATO has no plan for Ukraine. This is the terrifying thing. They hope Russia will escalate, but I said it again last week and I say it again, I don't think Russia's going to fight this war, this conflict on someone else's terms. Why should they? The Ukrainian army is throwing itself at the feet of these huge defenses. It's losing incredible amounts of men and material. There's 2 things will happen. Either the Ukrainian people will end it, or the vulnerable European governments will put enough pressure on the Americans, or a Republican president will be elected into the US. And if the United States, I said it last week, if the United States is indeed a democracy, we have to have a Republican president. And after all we've seen and heard from the Republicans, it looks like they're going to say, at least put a stranglehold on this vast amount of money and equipment going to Ukraine. And that means the party's over for Zelensky.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, did you see the actual GOP debate? Trump didn't even attend it. There were two Indians that are actually leading this whole debate. It's Vivek and Nikki Haley. I mean,
media that's dangerous for all of us. You went and you were in business with the Chinese that gave Hunter Biden $5 million. We can't trust you. We can't trust you. We can't have TikTok and
I think that this is very important. Mr. Ramaswamy, you have 15 seconds. I think, excuse me.
I mean,
I didn't know Nikki Haley was Indian.
Nikki Haley is actually born and raised in a town that's maybe 100 kilometers away from mine.
Wow.
Yeah, and then she moved to the U.S. and now she's actually running for president.
Is she slightly less stupid than Kamala Harris?
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm going to come.
Or are they similarly stupid? Are they both as stupid as each other? Who's the most stupid woman of these two?
Nikki Haley is actually a very, very smart woman, I think.
Is she?
Yeah, but she's a complete establishment woman. She's completely pro-establishment. And I don't know much about Vivek. I don't know what kind of guy he is. There are some rumors.
To be doing some rapping and stuff. I've seen. He likes to do a bit of rap.
When he wrote down the whole crowd, loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out.
There's some rumors that he's actually funded by George Soros, but those are just rumors. I don't actually know. Trump didn't even attend this GOP debate. He is miles ahead of his competition. He says, I don't need to attend this shit.
Well, the analogy is with the Russians and Trump. Like, the Russians don't need to do anything. And even the New York Times admits this in the graphic. You know, we're showing that Russia has netted out getting more territory since the 1st of January, despite all these losses. Why would Trump attend these debates? What could happen?
Nothing. It would change nothing at all because the Republicans, the actual Republican voter base, they will always vote for Trump. They know what establishment presidents, both Republican and Democrats, did to them in the last 20 years.
The only way Donald Trump will not be the next president of the United States is if he's in prison or dead.
Well, they cannot put him in prison because of the fact that none of the charges that he's facing, from what I understand, they are not, you don't get a prison term for that. Maximum, you get house arrest. So, I mean, he can run the U.S. government from his house or from the White House.
So, number one, he's not going to be taken off the ballot. There's no constitutional order that would allow that to happen. Number two, he's not going to prison because even if he's convicted, none of the things that he's charged with would warrant prison. And the Supreme Court would rule, if it ever gets up there, that he'd be in home confinement, where he could run the government if he wanted to. If he wins, he'll be confined to the White House or whatever.
The only way that they will actually stop him from running for president or becoming president is if they actually kill him. So I don't know where this will go.
Sure, listen, you know, American presidents never get shot, right?
John F. Kennedy got shot. He wanted to be
He wasn't
friends.
the first one. Lincoln was shot.
Lincoln was shot, yeah.
And there was another one. Was it someone else? Who was else was shot? And this dude, the nephew of JFK, is also running.
Robert F. Kennedy.
Interesting guy.
Yeah.
Very anti-vax, seemingly getting cast as a bit of a conspiracy theorist. And as we know now, I was a conspiracy theorist before the war in Ukraine, because I was saying Russia isn't to blame for this in its entirety. You got to think of it. I was a conspiracy theorist. We're all conspiracy theorists until we're proven right.
And then everybody forgets about us.
And then no one wants to talk about you anymore.
Guys, this was a great show. Thank you for staying with us during this entire period. Chay gave us an incredible analysis of what is happening on the ground in Ukraine. And we're going to be bringing you a lot of interesting stuff right from the capital, right from Moscow. And we'll see you next week.